You ever have one of those moments where your entire reality shifts in the span of a few seconds? Like 1 second, you're standing on solid ground, and the next, you're free falling into an abyss you didn't even know existed. That was me, sitting in my car, holding a glossy little sheet of paper that should have been the best news of my life. A sonogram. My wife's name at the top, the tiny outline of what was supposed to be my child in the middle. Except, here's the thing, it wasn't mine. See, my wife and I had been trying for a baby for almost 2 years. 2 years of planning, of counting days on calendars, of quiet disappointments every month when it didn't happen. And then, suddenly, like magic, she's pregnant. She cried when she told me, hugged me so tight I thought she'd break, whispered over and over, "We did it. Baby. We did it." And I believed her. Why wouldn't I? I loved her. I trusted her. I thought we were in this together. But life has a funny way of pulling the rug out from under you at the worst possible moment. It started with little things most guys wouldn't even notice, like how she suddenly got possessive of her phone when she never used to care. How she started dressing up for quick grocery runs. How she'd stare at me just a little too long, like she was searching for something in my face, some kind of guilt. And the weirdest part? She started overcompensating. Breakfast in bed, random, "I love you" texts throughout the day, buying me gifts for no reason. It was the kind of affection that felt more like a distraction than love. I ignored it. Because that's what we do, right? We tell ourselves we're just being paranoid, that we're overthinking. But paranoia has a nasty way of proving itself right. It was at her first ultrasound appointment that my gut really started screaming at me. The doctor was talking about the timeline, estimating how far along she was, and something didn't click. She was further along than she should have been. By a lot. And when I did the math in my head, something cold settled in my chest. Because the supposed conception date? That was during a week when I was on a business trip. Still, I didn't say anything. Not right away. Instead, I smiled, held her hand, kissed her forehead, played the part of the loving, overjoyed husband. But inside, something was shifting. That night, while she was in the shower, I did the thing I swore I'd never do. I went through her phone, and it took less than 5 minutes to find everything I needed. Messages, pictures, a name I recognized, someone I knew, someone she swore was just a friend. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at messages that were so bold they made my stomach turn. Reading how she'd been meeting him for months, how she told him she loved him, how she told him, not me, that she couldn't wait to have his baby. I didn't get angry, not in the way you'd expect. There was no yelling, no breaking things, no dramatic confrontation, just silence. A deep, suffocating silence as I put her phone back exactly where I found it, walked to the bathroom door, and listened to the sound of her humming in the shower like she hadn't just shattered our entire life. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to scream, wasn't going to cry, wasn't going to beg for answers. No, I was going to ruin her. Quietly, calculated, piece by piece. Because if she thought she could play me for a fool, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. If you had asked me a few months ago, I would have told you my life was good. Not perfect, nothing ever is, but good. The kind of good where you wake up next to someone you love, where your house feels like a home, where you don't second guess if the person lying beside you is exactly who they say they are. Mia and I had been married for 5 years. We had a routine, a rhythm. Mornings started with her stealing the blankets while I groggily got up first, making coffee before she even opened her eyes. She'd stumble into the kitchen in my oversized hoodie, rubbing sleep from her face, pressing a lazy kiss to my shoulder as I handed her a mug. We'd sit in comfortable silence, scrolling through our phones, trading small talk about our plans for the day. It wasn't fireworks and passion every second of the day, but it was ours. Familiar. Safe. I worked in project management. Long hours but good pay. Mia ran her own online business, candles, handcrafted stuff, the kind of thing that let her work from home while I was out. I liked that. I liked knowing she was happy, that she had the freedom to do what she wanted. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had plans. Big ones. A house in a quieter neighborhood, a dog, and most of all, a family. Trying for a baby was something we had decided on together. 2 years of tracking cycles, of hopeful whispers, of moments where I'd catch her staring at tiny onesies in store windows with that look in her eyes, the one that made me want to give her the world. And when it didn't happen right away, I told her we had time, that it would happen when it was meant to, that I wasn't worried, so she didn't need to be either. But I could see it wore on her. Every month that passed without news, I could see the way her smile faltered, the way she got just a little quieter on the bad days. And then, one night, she came to me with tears in her eyes and a pregnancy test in her hand. Positive. I remember everything about that moment. The way she collapsed into my arms, sobbing, gripping me like she never wanted to let go. The way I laughed, real, deep, joyful laughter, as I spun her around, kissing her like we were in some kind of movie. I remember pressing my forehead to hers, whispering, "We did it," because I thought we had. I thought that was the start of something beautiful. I was so blind. Looking back, I can pinpoint all the things that should have made me pause. The first, most obvious one? The timing. I had been away on a business trip exactly when she should have conceived. But I didn't question it. Not right away. She was my wife, and when you love someone, you don't let doubt creep in so easily. Then there were the small changes. Things that seemed insignificant at the time. She started dressing up more, even when she wasn't going anywhere. A little more makeup, a little more perfume, a little more attention to detail. I noticed, of course. I complimented her. I told her she looked beautiful. And she did. She smiled, kissed me, told me she just wanted to feel good about herself. Her phone habits changed, too. She used to leave it around the house, unlocked, charging on the kitchen counter. But suddenly, it was always with her. In her pocket. Face down on the table. Silent during our conversations. I caught her checking it constantly out of the corner of her eye, only to shove it away when I glanced over. Then there was the guilt affection. At first, I thought she was just happy. Overwhelmed with love, with excitement about the baby. But now I know she was overcompensating. The small things, random kisses, thoughtful little gifts, calling me baby more often than usual. The way she'd snuggle up to me at night, press her face into my chest, tell me how much she loved me. It felt too much. Like she was trying to convince herself of something, or trying to keep me from asking questions. But I didn't see it then. I didn't question it. I let myself believe. Because that's what you do when you're in love. You believe. Even when the cracks are right in front of you. It was a Tuesday evening when the first real crack appeared. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would send alarms blaring, just a moment. A small, sharp edge of something that didn't fit. And once you see the first crack, you start noticing all the others. Mia was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove, humming under her breath. I had just gotten home from work, loosened my tie, kissed her cheek like I always did. Everything felt normal, comfortable. But then her phone rang. It was sitting on the counter, right next to me. The screen lit up, buzzing against the marble. No name, just a number. I glanced at it instinctively, nothing unusual about that. But the moment Mia saw me looking, she practically lunged for it. A quick, jerky motion, knocking over the salt shaker in the process. The way her fingers clutched the phone, how she immediately turned her back to me, holding it to her chest like it was a secret. That's what did it. She let it ring. Didn't answer. Just stood there, tense, staring at the screen as it went dark. I kept my voice casual. "You gonna get that?" She hesitated. Too long. Then forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Spam call. A small thing. A harmless thing. And yet, the way she said it, too fast, too practiced, made something shift in my gut. They're getting more persistent. Huh? I tested her, watching her reaction. She nodded, setting the phone down face down this time. Yeah, super annoying. Then she turned back to the stove, stirring a little too hard, her entire body stiff in a way that didn't match her words. I didn't press. Not yet. Because maybe, just maybe, it really was nothing. But then, that night, I woke up alone. Mia wasn't in bed. The clock read 2:14 a.m. I frowned, rubbing sleep from my eyes, listening for movement. Nothing. The bathroom door was open, the hallway dark. I got up, padding down the hall, expecting to find her getting a glass of water, maybe sitting on the couch. Instead, I found her in the office, sitting at her desk, hunched over her laptop. The screen's glow lit up her face, casting long shadows on the walls. She hadn't heard me yet. Her back was to me, fingers hovering over the keyboard, hesitating, like she was debating something. "Mia?" She jumped. Not just startled, guilty. slamming the laptop shut so fast I thought she might crack the screen. I stared at her. She stared at me. "What are you doing?" Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Couldn't sleep." I glanced at the laptop. "So you decided to check emails at 2 in the morning?" She forced a laugh, but it was wrong. "Yeah, just catching up on some orders. The thing is, Mia never worked this late. Ever. She hated staying up past midnight. Always complained if I kept the TV on too long. And now she was sitting in the dark, jumping at shadows, closing her laptop like a teenager caught sneaking out. Something was off. I leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "Everything okay?" She nodded, too quickly. "Of course." A pause. Then, as if realizing she needed to seem more natural, she yawned dramatically, stretching her arms. "I should probably get back to bed." She stood, brushing past me without meeting my eyes. I let her go, but my feet stayed planted in that doorway, staring at the closed laptop. My mind replayed the moment over and over, searching for something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Then, before I knew it, I was moving. The laptop wasn't locked. I flipped it open. The email tab was still open, and there it was. A draft. Not sent yet. Not deleted. Just sitting there, unfinished. I don't know if I can do this anymore. He's starting to notice things. I think he suspects something. I stared at the words, my blood turning cold. She wasn't talking about work. I closed the laptop without deleting the draft. Then I went back to bed, slid under the covers beside her, and stared at the ceiling. Because whatever was going on, I wasn't ignoring it anymore. After that night, something in me shifted. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a man on a mission. The kind of mission where you don't get second chances, where you don't trust words, don't fall for smiles, don't let love blind you. I needed the truth. And if Mia thought she could keep it from me, she was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, I acted normal. I kissed her before heading to work, told her I'd be home late because of meetings, and watched the way she relaxed at those words. That was the first clue. She wanted me gone. She didn't ask what the meetings were about, didn't pretend to be disappointed, just nodded, almost too quickly, and went back to scrolling through her phone. That phone. It used to be just another object in our home, something she left lying around without a second thought. Now, it was always with her. Always face down, always tucked away in a pocket or a drawer. And when she did use it, she angled the screen away from me like muscle memory. It wasn't even subtle anymore. That afternoon, I sent her a simple text. "Hey, how's your day going?" She didn't respond for 2 hours. When she finally did, it was a short, sweet lie. "Busy. Just working on orders. Love you." Except I was parked down the street from our house. And she wasn't home. I had left work early, made up some excuse, and instead of driving back at my usual time, I had parked in an area where I could see our driveway, but where she wouldn't notice me. The car was gone. The lights inside were off. She wasn't working on orders. She wasn't home at all. I didn't text again. Didn't call. Just waited. An hour later, she pulled into the driveway. And that's when I saw it, the second clue. She sat in the car for a full 5 minutes before getting out, staring at her phone, typing something, deleting, typing again. Her face was twisted in concentration, in calculation. Then, as if flipping a switch, she put on a smile. A big, exaggerated one, like she was rehearsing. When she finally stepped out, she grabbed a bag from the back seat, a change of clothes. Something she hadn't left the house with. She went inside like nothing happened. Like she hadn't just fed me a lie and then cleaned up her tracks. That night, I tested her again. "So, how was your day?" She hesitated, barely a second, but I caught it. Then came the pre-packaged answer. "Good. Just a little overwhelming. Too many orders at once." She sighed, rubbing her forehead. "I had to go out for supplies, but I swear, traffic was a nightmare." Traffic. A detail she threw in to make it believable. I nodded. I smiled. I let her believe I bought it. But inside, I was already 3 steps ahead. Over the next few days, I watched. Not obviously. Not like some jealous, insecure husband sniffing around for trouble. No, I watched like a hunter. Studying her movements, her patterns, the way she adjusted. And she was adjusting. She started locking her phone, changing passwords, putting distance between us in ways she thought I wouldn't notice. When she left the room to take calls, she took her phone with her. She started showering right after she got home, like she needed to wash something away. Her texts became predictable, the same vague responses, like she had a script in her head. But the biggest red flag? Her schedule changed. She had always been someone of routine. Same grocery runs, same coffee stops, same predictable patterns. But suddenly, she had errands that took hours, last-minute appointments, meetups with friends that never lined up when I casually checked their social media. It was like watching someone slowly build a house of lies, brick by brick, without realizing the foundation was already cracking. Then came the third clue. One night, as she slept, I picked up her phone. Face ID. That's what she switched to. Smart, if she was dealing with an idiot. But she had forgotten one thing. She slept deeply. I angled the screen over her face. The phone unlocked instantly. And there it was. A text thread with one name deleted. Just a blank gray bubble, like she thought removing the contact name would erase the suspicion. But I scrolled up, and the messages? They told me everything I needed to know. I miss you. He's been acting weird. I think he's catching on. I'll see you soon. Same place? Same place. I stared at the words, my mind cold, calculating. I had what I needed. I didn't get angry. I didn't wake her up, didn't throw the phone, didn't confront her. That wasn't how this was going to play out. No, I was going to let her think she was winning. Because now, the real game began. I knew where to find them before I even saw it with my own eyes. The messages on Mia's phone had been vague, but not vague enough. Same place. She thought she was being clever, thought she was covering her tracks. But she had underestimated me. I waited until she left for one of her errands. Another text came through just as she stepped out the door. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it said. Leaving now. I followed her. Not close enough to be obvious, but just enough to watch the way she kept checking her rearview mirror. She was paranoid. Good. That meant she knew what she was doing was wrong, but not paranoid enough to notice me keeping a steady 2 cars behind. 15 minutes later, she pulled into a small hotel parking lot. One of those discreet places. Not a big chain, nothing with cameras at the entrance. The kind of place where people checked in under fake names and paid in cash. My stomach was a knot of ice. But my mind? Sharp. Focused. Calculating. I didn't rush in. Didn't storm the place like a man out for revenge. That's what weak men do. That's what she expected me to do. No, I sat, I watched, and I waited. 5 minutes later, another car pulled in. I knew that car. I had seen it parked near my house before, seen it in passing when Mia claimed she was out with friends. Then, the driver stepped out, and everything inside me turned into stone. Him. Not a stranger. Not some nameless nobody. Someone I knew. Someone she swore was just a friend. Daniel. I had met him at a few gatherings. A casual acquaintance, the kind you shake hands with and forget about. A guy who had always been a little too friendly with Mia, but I had never thought much of it. Because I trusted her. Because I was an idiot. He looked around, nervous. He knew this was wrong. Then, as if it was the most normal thing in the world, he walked inside. A minute later, Mia followed. And just like that, there was no more doubt. No more second-guessing. No more hoping I had it all wrong. The truth was right in front of me. And it wasn't just the betrayal. It was the insult of it. The way she had laughed in my face, kissed me goodnight, let me rub her stomach thinking I was feeling my child when it was his. The rage came, but it wasn't wild. It wasn't reckless. It was controlled. Refined. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, and I took my time. Photos. Videos. Mia going inside. Daniel right behind her. The hotel name in the background. Cold, undeniable evidence. I could have left then. Could have gone home and waited for her return, let her spin another one of her pathetic lies. But I wasn't done. I stepped out of my car. Walked across the parking lot, calm, measured. Went inside, straight to the front desk. The woman barely looked up from her computer. "Hey," I said casually. "My buddy Daniel just checked in. He forgot his wallet in my car. Mind telling me his room number?" She hesitated. "I'm not supposed to." I slid a $50 across the counter. Her eyes flicked to the money, then to me, then back to the money. A second later, she sighed. "Room 214. I pocketed my phone. walked down the hall. My footsteps were steady, my hands in my pockets. I reached the door. I didn't knock. I didn't give them the courtesy of hiding. I just turned the handle, unlocked. And there they were. Mia, Daniel, half-dressed, caught up in each other. So lost in their little world, they didn't even notice me at first. I let the door slam behind me. That got their attention. Mia gasped, scrambling away, eyes wide with horror. Daniel nearly fell off the bed. What the? I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I just held up my phone. Let them see. Let them understand. Mia's face drained of color. Babe. I laughed. Laughed. Not angry. Not hurt. Just cold amusement. Please, I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. Don't embarrass yourself with an excuse. We're past that. Daniel looked between us, wide-eyed, mouth opening and closing like a fish. I ignored him. He wasn't important. Mia reached for me, but I stepped back, and the way her hand hung in the air, trembling, was almost pathetic. Wait, just let me explain. Explain? I repeated, tilting my head. Mia, you're half naked in a hotel room with another man. What's left to explain? She swallowed hard. Her eyes flicked to my pocket where my phone had disappeared. She knew. She knew I had everything. Good. I let the silence stretch, let them wallow in it. Then I turned, reached for the door. Mia's voice was desperate. Where are you going? I smiled. A real smile. Home, I said simply. But don't worry. You won't be there when I get back. And then I walked out, leaving them frozen in place, their world crumbling. Because I wasn't just walking away. I was preparing the final blow. I drove home in absolute silence, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Not from rage. Not from heartbreak. From clarity. The kind of clarity that only comes when the blindfold is finally ripped off, when every lie, every whispered, I love you, every fake smile falls apart and reveals the ugly truth beneath. Mia thought she had won. She thought she had played me, let me by the hand like a fool while she carried another man's child, while she twisted the knife behind my back. But she had underestimated me. She had mistaken patience for weakness. And now, she was going to learn what a real betrayal feels like. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight for something that had already been poisoned. No, I was going to erase her. But not just from my life, from everything she cared about. Mia's entire world revolved around one thing: control. Control over how people saw her. The perfect wife, the glowing mother-to-be, the sweet, loving woman who had the perfect marriage. She needed that image. And I was going to rip it from her hands, piece by piece, until she had nothing left but the cold, hard consequences of her actions. Step 1 was information. I already had photos, videos, evidence that wasn't just enough for divorce. It was enough to destroy her carefully curated life. But I needed more. I spent the next few hours going through our shared finances, our joint accounts, every document she had ever signed without reading the fine print. And what I found? It was almost too easy. See, Mia had never been great with money. She left the bills to me, let me handle the budgeting, never questioned where things were going. She was reckless with spending, and I had always cleaned up the mess behind her. But now, I wasn't cleaning up anything. I transferred every shared asset into my name. The house, mine. The car she drove, mine. The savings, locked. By the time she tried to access anything, she would find herself staring at a cold, empty account. The only thing left in her name was debt, credit cards maxed out, a few lingering loans she had taken out without thinking. And I made sure she was solely responsible for every cent. Step 2 was social destruction. Mia's entire reputation was built around appearances. Our friends, our family, the little world she had created, it was all based on one simple idea: that she was a good person, the devoted wife, the woman everyone admired. So I made sure the truth came out, not through screaming or accusations, through precision. I compiled a package: screenshots of her messages, the hotel photos, timestamps, bank statements showing her secret withdrawals, everything. And then I sent it to her parents, to our mutual friends, to the baby shower group chat she had started just days ago. No words, no explanations, just cold, irrefutable facts. And then I waited. The first message came within minutes. Mia, what is this? Then another. Please tell me this isn't true. And another. You disgust me. By the time she finally called me, her world was already burning. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then I answered. Calm, steady, controlled. Hello, Mia. Her voice was frantic, shaking. What did you do? I almost laughed. I let people see the real you. That's all. She started crying then. We can talk about this. Please, you don't have to do this. Do what, Mia? I cut her off, voice colder than she had ever heard it. Let you live with the consequences of your own choices. Silence. Then she whispered, You're ruining my life. And there it was. The real Mia. Not sorry for what she had done. Not ashamed. Just angry that she got caught. I smiled. No, Mia. You ruined your life the moment you decided I wasn't enough. I'm just cleaning up the mess. And then I hung up. Step 3 was the final blow. The divorce papers were already in motion, filed with evidence that ensured she would get nothing. No settlement, no spousal support, not even a place to stay. She would be out of the house by the end of the week, forced to fend for herself. And Daniel? Oh, he had his own problems. See, what Mia didn't know was that Daniel was engaged. His fiancée? She had gotten the same package as everyone else. The last I heard, Mia was living in a tiny apartment, drowning in debt, her reputation in tatters. People she once called friends had turned their backs on her. The man she had thrown everything away for? Gone. And me? I walked away clean, untouched, free. Because in the end, she didn't just lose me. She lost everything. I had no interest in letting Mia crawl away quietly. No, she had built her entire life around control, around manipulating reality to suit her version of the truth. She needed people to see her as the perfect wife, the glowing mother-to-be, the woman who had it all. And I was about to take that away from her in one devastating moment. The baby shower was in 3 days. A grand event, planned down to the last detail, a venue filled with friends, family, people she had spent years crafting her image for. She had spent weeks curating the guest list, ensuring only the right people would be there, people who would gush over her, celebrate her. I had no doubt she would stand there, hand on her belly, smiling like the world was perfect, like she hadn't shattered our marriage with her lies. She thought she had gotten away with it. That's what made this so satisfying. The night before the party, I made my final moves. I sent one last message to our shared group chat. No words, just a single video file. But not just any video, the culmination of everything. Text screenshots, hotel footage, bank statements showing her secret spending, the draft email she had left open that night. Undeniable, inescapable proof. And then, I waited. Morning came. I could tell from the silence in the house that she hadn't checked her phone yet. She moved through the kitchen like nothing had changed, humming as she made coffee, like she wasn't about to walk into the biggest humiliation of her life. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. She kissed my cheek, oblivious, then grabbed her purse and left for the venue. I followed. The moment I arrived, I saw her world crumbling in real time. Guests were outside, talking in hushed voices, their expressions a mix of disbelief, disgust, and pity. A few people had their phones out, rewatching the video I had sent. I walked through the crowd, nodding casually to those who made eye contact. Some looked away. Some smirked. And then I heard it, her voice. Inside, Mia was arguing with her mother, voice high, desperate. It's not what it looks like. Her mother's face was pale with fury. Don't insult me by lying, Mia. I stepped forward. Oh, but Mia's great at lying. Isn't that right, darling? The entire room went silent. She turned, and when our eyes met, I saw it. The moment she realized she had lost everything. She tried to regain control. I can explain. I tilted my head. Explain what? That you were sneaking around with Daniel? That you've been lying to my face for months? That you're carrying another man's child and letting me believe it was mine? Her breath hitched. Someone gasped. She looked around, as if searching for an escape. But there was none. Her best friend stepped forward, voice shaking. Mia, tell me this isn't true. Mia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because she knew. There was nothing left to say. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a folder. The divorce papers. I held them up for everyone to see, then turned back to her. By the way, everything is already transferred into my name. The house, the car, the savings. Hope Daniel has room for you, because you're not coming back home. She staggered back like I had physically hit her. A woman from the back muttered, "Wow." She really thought she'd get away with it. Mia's face crumpled. She looked at me, eyes pleading. "Please, we can fix this. I love you." I laughed. Cold. Unforgiving. "You love me." I gestured to the video playing on the projector screen behind her and Daniel, walking into that hotel. I stepped closer, lowered my voice just enough so that only she could hear. "You don't even love yourself." And then I walked away, leaving her standing there, broken, with nothing left but the wreckage of her own choices. Mia stood frozen, her face pale, her lips trembling as the weight of everything crashed down on her. The whispers around the room grew louder, sharp with judgment, laced with disgust. People she once called friends now stared at her like she was a stranger, someone unrecognizable. Her mother stood stiffly beside her, arms crossed, looking at her own daughter like she was seeing her for the first time. Mia turned in slow, jerky movements, searching for someone, anyone, who would take her side. But no one stepped forward. There was no sympathy, no saving grace. Only the cold, crushing reality that she was completely alone. I watched as she opened her mouth, then closed it again, her throat bobbing as she struggled for words. Excuses. Lies. Some way to twist this into something salvageable. I had seen that look before, that desperate grasp for control. But this time, there was nothing left for her to manipulate. Finally, she forced out a choked, I didn't mean for this to happen." A bitter laugh escaped me, cutting through the tense air. "You didn't mean for what to happen, Mia?" I tilted my head, my voice even controlled. "You didn't mean to sneak around behind my back? You didn't mean to lie every single day while carrying another man's child? Or," I let the silence stretch, watching her squirm, "or you didn't mean to get caught?" Tears welled up in her eyes, glistening but not falling. She shook her head frantically. "It wasn't like that. I was scared." "Scared of what?" I asked, my expression unreadable. "Scared that I would find out? Scared that I'd walk away? Or scared that your little fantasy world would fall apart the second people saw the real you?" She sucked in a sharp breath, glancing at the crowd that had formed around us, eyes wide with humiliation. She turned back to me, stepping forward like she was reaching for some invisible thread between us, something she thought she could still hold on to. "I love you. I do. I made a mistake." A mistake. That word made my jaw tighten. A mistake was spilling coffee, forgetting an appointment, taking a wrong turn on the highway. What she did, that wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. Repeated, calculated, done with full knowledge of what it would cost if she was ever caught. I stepped back, just enough to watch her flinch. "No, Mia. A mistake is something you regret the moment you do it. I gestured toward the video playing on the projector, the evidence in the hands of everyone she cared about. "You didn't regret a thing. Not until right now." Her breath hitched, her hands shaking as she reached for me. "Please, I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Don't touch me." The cold finality in my voice cut through her like a blade. She froze mid-motion, her fingers curling into themselves, her entire body trembling as she realized. This was it. There was no coming back from this. Then, just when she thought it couldn't get worse, her mother spoke. "I can't believe this." Her voice was firm, disappointed in a way that no amount of begging could fix. "You had everything, Mia. A husband who loved you, a home, a future, and you threw it all away for what? Some temporary thrill." Mia spun to face her. "Mom, please." But her mother shook her head. "Don't." Her face was unreadable, but her voice was sharp. "You've embarrassed this family enough. Don't you dare expect me to defend you." Mia's breath came out in short, uneven gasps, her chest rising and falling as the weight of her own downfall settled in. The reality of it, the shame, the isolation, the utter destruction of the image she had spent years crafting. This was worse than any shouting match, worse than any slap or curse. She wasn't being screamed at. She was being dismissed. And then, from behind the crowd, a new voice. Daniel. He had arrived late, probably thinking he could sneak in, pretend everything was fine, salvage what little was left. But he had walked straight into the storm. And when Mia turned to look at him, her eyes filled with desperation, his expression told her everything she needed to know. He wasn't going to save her. He wasn't going to fight for her. He wasn't even going to meet her gaze. His fiancée had seen the video too, and judging by the slap mark on his face and the suitcase beside him, he had already been kicked to the curb. Mia opened her mouth, some final plea forming on her lips, but he was already walking away. And just like that, she had no one. I didn't stay to watch what happened next. There was nothing left for me there. I turned, walked out without another word. As I stepped into the sunlight, the weight that had sat on my chest for weeks finally lifted. Not because I had gotten revenge, not because I had destroyed her life, but because I had made sure she felt it. The same helplessness, the same powerlessness, the same cold, gut-wrenching realization that she was nothing more than a consequence of her own choices. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a single finger. She did this to herself. I never looked back that day. I didn't need to. I knew exactly how the rest of it played out, because I had designed it that way. Mia's world didn't just crumble. It collapsed entirely, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the ashes of her carefully constructed image. And she had no one to blame but herself. The fallout was immediate. I didn't hear from her that night, but I didn't need to. The messages from mutual friends, the ones who still had enough decency to update me, painted a clear picture. She didn't go home. She couldn't. Her parents refused to let her in. After everything, they were too ashamed to even look at her, let alone support her. The perfect daughter, the one they bragged about to relatives, was now a walking disgrace. Her mother told her to figure it out on her own. Her father wouldn't even speak to her. Daniel? Gone. Not just out of the picture, erased. His fiancée had thrown him out the same day, taking everything with her, leaving him just as wrecked as Mia. The last I heard, he was staying at some friend's couch, jobless, single, and humiliated. Apparently, his fiancée had a family connection at his job and ensured he didn't have a future there anymore. He and Mia, they weren't some tragic love story. They weren't destined for each other. They were two people who got exactly what they deserved. As for Mia, she had no money, no home, and no reputation left to salvage. The friends who had once admired her, envied her life, cut her off completely. She wasn't the glowing, soon-to-be mother they wanted to celebrate anymore. She was a liar, a fraud, a woman who had been exposed in the most brutal way possible. Her best friend? The one she used to gossip with about other people's relationships? She was the first to drop her. Apparently, she had called Mia that night, and after a long silence, simply said, "I can't believe you." And then that was it. Mia tried to reach out to me a week later. A single, desperate message. "I don't know where to go. Please, I just want to talk." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. A few days later, she showed up at the house. Or at least, she tried to. I saw her through the security camera, standing at the door, hesitating before knocking. She looked different, worn down, defeated, not the confident, smiling woman who had once convinced herself she could have it all. This was someone who had lost everything. I let her stand there. 5 minutes. 10. Eventually, she sat down on the steps, arms wrapped around herself, staring at nothing. And then, after nearly an hour, she left. She didn't try again. Last I heard, she was renting a tiny apartment across town, struggling to keep up with the debt I had left in her name. Apparently, she tried reaching out to old friends for help, but no one wanted to be associated with her anymore. Her online business collapsed. Word spread fast in our social circles, and people who once supported her brand refused to spend a single dime on her products. Meanwhile, I moved on. Easily, effortlessly. The divorce was finalized faster than she could process what had happened, and because of how I structured everything, she got nothing. No money, no assets, no second chances. And me? I thrived. I took my time healing, but I never let her shadow linger. There was no emotional breakdown, no bitter spiral into loneliness. I focused on myself, on building something new, on finding someone who actually deserved me. And when I finally did, when I met a woman who was the complete opposite of Mia, loyal, honest, someone who truly cared, I made sure she saw. Because the best revenge It wasn't just taking everything from her. It was proving that she never really mattered to me at all. Months passed, and life moved on. For me, at least. For Mia, it remained frozen in the moment she was exposed. The last time I saw her, purely by accident, was at a coffee shop downtown. She was sitting alone, staring into her cup, looking nothing like the woman I used to know. The confidence, the arrogance, the control, all of it was gone. She was just another person now, forgotten, irrelevant. She didn't see me, and I didn't give her the satisfaction of acknowledging her. Because at the end of the day, that was the real punishment, wasn't it? Not just losing me. Losing everything she thought made her special. Meanwhile, I had never been better. Free, in control, untouched by the past. I had a new home, a better life, and, eventually, someone who actually valued me. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about her anymore. She was just a lesson, one I had learned well. People always ask me if I ever regretted it. If I ever wondered what would have happened had I taken a different path, forgiven her, tried to rebuild, given her another chance. And to that, I say, would she have given me the same mercy if I had been the one who betrayed her? No, and that's why I have no regrets. Because in the end, she didn't just lose me. She lost herself. So, tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you have done the same? Or would you have gone even further?